Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Filip Černý, and welcome to our today's webinar. The webinar is called How to Comply with Current EU Regulations with NIS2 and RCE. Before we start, let me go over some housekeeping rules. So on your right side, you have a navigation panel with the question mark being the first icon on the top. So whenever throughout the webinars you have questions, you can post it there. We will try to answer as many questions as possible throughout the webinars, and there will be a dedicated Q&A sections at the end. For those who are interested in the recording of the webinars, the recording will be shared in your email address after the webinar has ended, so you will have the option to watch it on demand whenever you need to. So that's for the housekeeping rules. Roman, welcome. I give you the word. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone who joined the webinar. My name is Roman Kupka. I'm Senior Principal Consultant in Progress Software, and today's webinar topic is how to comply with current EU regulations, network and information security, and resilience of critical entities. So let's start with the agenda. We are going to start with a short description, what it's all about regarding the EU directives, followed by how to meet the measures and obligations. We'll go through the incident handling and reporting, followed by the short success story and Q&A session. So let's start with the key terms, because it's very important to understand the terms regarding the EU regulations. So first one is NISA. This is the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, and NISA is responsible for many regulation, directives, legislations, processes, awareness, and so on within the European Union cyberspace. Network and Information Security Directive, number 2. It's a directive describing the measures for a high common level of cybersecurity in the European Union, aimed to build cybersecurity capabilities, mitigate threats to network and information systems, and it's repealing the Network and Information Security Directive, which was effective in 2016. RCE directive is a resilience of critical entities, and this kind of the directive introducing a number of additional critical infrastructure protection measures. So, and it was effective. The effectiveness of RCE is the same time as Network and Information Security Directive. So it's December 2022. So, okay, what is Network and Information Security Directive about? It's all about the security of networks and information systems. And that means that this ability to resist any event that may compromise the availability, authenticity, integrity, and confidentiality of data or services. The incident is this is the event compromising actually the availability, authenticity, integrity, and confidentiality of data or services. Incident handling. This is the actions and procedures aiming to prevent, detect, analyze, contain, or to respond to and recover from an incident. The risk is a potential for loss or disruption caused by an incident. CSIRT is a computer security incident response team. Essential entity, this is one of 2 regulated entities in a Network and Information Security Directive, and this is the operator of essential services. The sectors with the high criticality. And that's the important that the critical entities regarding the RCE directive are, some of them, many of them are operator of essential services. And important entity is the operator of important services. This is other critical sectors. So what's the main difference between Network Information Security Directive and resilience of critical entities? So as I mentioned, the sectors. In a NIS is the 11 essential and 7 important sectors. And in RCE is 11 critical the sectors, but they are including the 10 essential and 1 important entity. The difference between the measures are described really clearly, that the NIS directive is more about cybersecurity, like policies, incident handling, business continuity management, supply chain security, network security, cryptography, access control, multi-factor, and so on. And the critical measures are more about the physical security, prevention, crisis management, and so on. Awareness, for example. But reporting is all about the incident reporting for both of them. Let's say national coverage is represented by competent authorities for both of them. It can be the same authority or not, depends on transposition of these directives into the national legislations. But as I mentioned, in the light of the relationship between the physical security and the cybersecurity of critical entities, they are including 10 of essential entities, member states of the European Union shall ensure that these both directives are implemented in a coordinated manner. It's a logical step, actually. So let's go through the Network and Information Security Directive, because it's more relevant to the cybersecurity topic than the RCE. So we will go through the NIS directive briefly, then through the RCE. But RCE is, let's say, connected to the essential entities and 1 important entity. So what is all about? This is about the unification of overall rules for the protection of EU cyberspace and RCE, resilience of critical infrastructure. So every single member state need to have any kind of the national competent authority. It can be, let's say, national security authority with many departments like CSIRTs or computer emergency response teams or national competence centers and so on. And they are responsible for transposition of the directives into the national legislation, and also as a competent authority regarding the sectors, like important entities, the other critical sectors, like operator of the important services. We are including the postal and courier services, waste management, manufacture, production, and distribution of chemicals, production, processing, and the distribution of the food. This is also this kind of entity included into the RCE directive, manufacturing, digital providers, and research. And the sectors of a high criticality, that means operators of essential services, that mean essential entities like energy, transport, banking, financial market infrastructures, health, drinking water, wastewater, digital infrastructure, ICT service management, B2B, public administration, and a space. And you can see that 10 of them are included also into RCE directive as a critical sectors or critical entities. But from the perspective of the businesses or institutions or organizations, this is the thousands or 10,000 of organizations per EU member states. And network monitoring, visibility, and security is a fundamental component of the technical measures to comply, for example, the Article 21 and 23 in this directive. Then, whole obligations are about the incident reporting. during the incident handling procedures. And the national competent authority is allowed to provide any kind of the audits to these entities, or if any kind of the faults or missing measurements on a place, they are allowed to provide the penalties to the entities, like fines and so on. This is about the essential and important entities. In the other way, we have CSIRTs. This is the question, because it depends on the national legislations. Every single EU member state can, let's say, have the one CSIRT as a minimum, at least. For example, in a national competent authority, but sometimes, and some EU member states can create the more CSIRTs, like a sector-based governmental authority CSIRTs, like a computer security incident response team. For example, Ministry of Economy can be responsible for energy, and so on and so on. And we can also have in EU member states the accredited CSIRTs provided by security operations center providers or managed service providers. Depends on the legislations, national legislations. So this is also the obligations of the incident reporting from the essential and important entities, the CSIRTs, and CSIRTs are responsible for a network and information system monitoring, analysis, and support for incident handling back to the regulated entities. This is potentially units of the organizations per EU member states, this kind of the computer security incident response teams. And again, because it's all about the supporting of the network and information systems monitoring, analysis, and support for incident handling, network monitoring, data collections, forensic analysis is a fundamental component to comply Article 11.3, describe the obligations for computer security incident response teams. So this is all about the Network and Information Security Directive. Also, all entities and CSIRTs and so on need to share the informations about the incidents, the early warnings, the threats, and so on. Depends on the national legislation, so the national competent authority, and national competent authority is responsible to share information to the European agencies and so on. So let's talk a little bit about the high-level overview of Network and Information Security Directive. This is, few articles are really important from the perspective of, for example, implementation of the network monitoring measures. This is the Article 21.1 and 2. It's about the cybersecurity risk management measures for essential important entities. And every single essential and important entity need to take appropriate technical, operational, and organizational measures to manage the risks. So it's all about the preventing or minimizing the impact of the incidents in their environment, because they are providing the essential or important services. The next one is the Article 11.3, and this is describing actually the obligation for computer security incident response teams. The obligation of the CSIRTs is monitoring and analyzing cyber threats, vulnerabilities, and incidents at national level. And again, they can provide assistance to regulated entities concerned regarding real-time or near real-time monitoring of their networks and information systems. They are responsible for collecting and analyzing forensic data and providing any kind of the dynamic risk and incident analysis. So Article 23.4 is describing the incident reporting obligations. So the regulated entities, like essential and important entities, need to notify every single significant incident to the CSIRTs. And notification timeline is reduced as soon as possible, but within 24 and 72 hours. We will talk a little bit more about this kind of the differences later on. And Article 34.4 and 5, it's about the penalties or fines. This is describing any kind of the amount of possible penalties which can be applied to the essential services if they are not compliant with the national legislations and requirements, mainly regarding the Article 21 or 23. This is about the measures and incident reporting obligations. And Article 32 and 33 is describing the enforcement options of the audits, on-site inspections, and so on from the national competent authority. So this is the most important articles from the perspective of this kind of the directive, and will be transposed into the national legislation. So what's the timeline of this directive? So by October 17, 2024, all member states shall adopt and publish the measures necessary to comply with this directive. What does it mean? That means that the transposition of this directive needs to be done till this date into the national legislation. It can call, for example, like a cybersecurity act or law or whatever. This is based on Article 41. During this transposition period, need to be provided any kind of the preparation. So, and mainly from the national competent authority. So adoption of national cybersecurity strategy, that provides for the strategic objectives, the resources required to achieve those objectives, and appropriate policies, regulatory measures, and standards including. This is based on the Article 7. This is the obligation for a national competence authority. What's the important is the January 17, 2025, because till that date, all essential and important, that means the regulated entities, need to be registered on a list of the essential and important entities, providing domain name registration services. This is regarding the digital service operators and so on, or providers. So the registration of every single regulated entity need to be done by 17 January 2025. After that, they need to follow the national legislation. So they need to first provide any kind of the classification of informations and categorization of networks and information systems for measures applications. So if we have the overview about the assets in the regulated entity, we can apply the measures. That means the technical, operational, and organizational measures. Then, for example, technical measures can be resolved by the technologies itself, and the essential important entities may require to use certified ICT products and solutions based on European cybersecurity certification schemes. This is about the Article 24. That means that this is more about the supply chain security or implementation of the technologies and the solutions which are certified by the European cybersecurity certification schemes. Then they need to follow essential and important entities, the obligations. This is most about that measures need to be on place, and it's about the notification of the significant incidents. And then probably within the 2 years after the effectiveness of the national legislation, the national competent authority can provide any kind of the audits. And if or where enforcement measures based on audit results are ineffective, essential entity needs to take the necessary actions to remedy the deficiencies to comply with the requirements. So this is the timeline. And T means the effectiveness date of the directive. So timeline of the network and information security directive. Okay, Philip, do we have any kind of the questions?
Okay, Roman. No, we don't yet. So right now, I would like to reiterate that on the top right corner of the panel, navigation panel, you have a question mark icon, so you can submit your questions there. And maybe, Roman, just a clarification for myself. So on the timeline, you had, I think, 45 months. So it's essentially, it's like almost 2 years from the directive when it was released, right? So the
directive, yes, definitely, because we have 22 months during the transposition period by 17 October 2024, and then every single regulated entity need to, let's say, be comply with the national legislation, not with the directive itself. So directive is just the framework how to provide the national legislation. So that's the point. There's the timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Super. Roman, you can continue.
So how to meet the measures and obligations? It's more about the essential and important entities and also computer security incident response teams based on this directive. Let's start where is the security gap, because this directive is all about the network security and information system security, where our data are transmitted through the networks. So many organizations are, let's say, able to secure all the time the edge or perimeter security with the firewalls and so on. And they are focusing also on endpoint or application securities. But many of them are missing any kind of the deep visibility what's really going on a network. So this is the main security gap in many organizations and will be in regulated entities definitely. If we are building the adaptive security architecture where zero trust is in a centric, we can see any kind of zero trust control plane and any kind of the levels of the adaptive security architecture. And the sensor grids, data repository, and the collections are also about the network security, where Flowmon, for example, provides any kind of the network detection and response capabilities, together with the endpoint security like XDRs, like extended detection and response, or endpoint detection and response, the cloud security, and log collectors, and automation systems like the SIEMs and the SOARs are main level providing the proper data for a security operation, for a threat intelligence and automated defense. So the network security is a fundamental part of the adaptive security architecture, and also the fundamental part of one of the measures regarding the Article 21 in this directive, and will be definitely including into the national legislation measures, technical measures actually. So let's talk a little bit about the Flowmon architecture in this kind of the network security level. So the Flowmon solution is the certified for a public cloud services like a Google Cloud Platform, AWS, and Microsoft Azure. And many organizations have migrated the application or systems into this kind of the public cloud services. And we have also the IT environment and OT environment. Many of the critical entities, that means the operator of the essential entities, have the interoperable IT/OT environment. So from the cloud, we've got any kind of the gateways, the firewalls, the local area networks, and private data centers in the IT environment. We can continue to the OT environment, where are a few levels of the OT architecture, where are the firewalls, the network itself, then again the firewalls, and again the networks and user machines, and so on. And then we've got the level 2 with the RCUs, control and management system, and so on. So this is more about the interoperability of the IT and OT environment, and the main component of the Flowmon solution is the sensor grid. This is the probe, Flowmon probe. It can be in a hardware or virtual appliance. It's able to receive, copy route traffic data in the packets through the mirror ports, span ports, or we can use any kind of the taps or network packet brokers as a source of this kind of the data. And the Flowmon probe is actually kind of the extended IPFix or NetFlow generator. And probe is able to send this kind of the information about the network data traffic to the NetFlow or IPFix collectors. The second component of the Flowmon monitoring capabilities is the collector itself. So IPFix collector or NetFlow collector. It's also able to have it in a hardware or virtual appliance, or even a cloud appliance, because it's certified solutions for that three main public cloud operators. And the collector is not only able to receive the data from the Flowmon probes only, but also it's able to receive any kind of the NetFlow standard data, like a NetFlow version 5, 9, SFlow, IPFix, and more from the infrastructure itself. So through the secure web user interface, we've got access to the main intelligence of the network monitoring, like network visibility and monitoring, performance monitoring, threats and anomaly detections. We've got the capability for full packet capturing and analysis, and many more. This is also to have integrated into any kind of the IT infrastructure management systems as a source of data, where IT infrastructure management systems are monitor also the components of the infrastructure, but also can receive the kind of the important data and provide a correlation with this kind of the assets. Or we can use the syslog export by common event format or REST API for another security information and event management systems, or security orchestration and automation response systems to provide the better resilience or security resilience of the whole environment. So this is the high level of architecture where the Flowmon components are providing the deep network monitoring analysis. And this is more about the architecture for operators of the essential services and operator of important services. And what about the CSIRTs? Computer security incident response teams are responsible for many of the services, and they can support any kind of the assessment, management, prevention, cybersecurity related emergencies, as well as the coordination of the incident response. And CSIRT have got any kind of the fulfillment of need to fulfill any kind of the technical, organizational, technical, procedural, and personal conditions. They are responsible for a preventive task like awareness, training, monitoring, evidence, and also the reactive tasks like alerting and early warning, detection, response, and digital forensics. And the CSIRT can be like a department in a security operations center, actually, where security operations center have got the more departments like engineering, network and application security, threat hunting, or threat intelligence. And if we can see in top right corner, the Security Operations Center Visibility Triad, the fundamental component is also the network detection and response. That means the network monitoring of the security threats, the anomalies, and security incidents on the network, together with the SIEMs responsible for log collection and correlation, and EDRs or XDRs, which are responsible for endpoint protection. This is about the endpoint detection and response, or extended detection and response. So this is about the computer security incident response teams. And how it looks like within this kind of the architecture, where the CSIRTs are responsible for monitoring the network of the essential and important entities. So we've got the many the entities like operator of the essential services and operator of important services. This is the infrastructure of the regulated entity 1, 2, and 3. Many of them are using the type of the network monitoring solution like Flowmon is, where the probes are receiving the raw network traffic data from the infrastructure itself and exporting it to the collectors. And what we are doing, we are building the distributed architecture for CSIRT capabilities to the whole view of the network data for a reason of the monitoring of the threats and anomaly detection, network visibility monitoring, collecting and analyzing the forensics data, and monitoring and analyzing cyber threats. And the CSIRTs are using this kind of the network intelligence monitoring solution to get the visibility for the and also the support for the regulated entities, and then also the this kind of the intelligence and the data processing is, let's say, used by SIEM solutions in the CSIRTs environment for as a main fundamental component of the network data informations regarding the operational security anomalies or whatever. So this is about the CSIRTs. And this kind of architecture, both of the architecture we are building for many regulated entities, the operator of the essential services, operator of the important entities, and also the CSIRTs like this. So also the Gartner is talking and describing the continuous monitoring and analysis. This is about the predict, prevent, detect, and respond. And this is including this kind of the principles like incident access management, privileged access management, multi-factor authentication, zero trust network architecture, application of the AI or machine learning for better detection, also using the threat intelligence, the response, the risk assessments, orchestration, attack simulations, backup, and restore. This is all about the technology principles into applied into the continuous monitoring and analysis framework from a Gartner. The red ones are also the principles using by the Flowmon, and also the main Flowmon principles of the continuous monitoring and analysis we are using is a combination of the machine learning, the adaptive baselining, the heuristic behavior patterns is about the behavioral monitoring, and threat intelligence combining any kind of the reputation data and the signatures. So it's about the more than 200 individual algorithms, more than 40 built-in detection methods. That means that you can, or essential important and the CSIRT entities can create their own detection methods. And it's all about long-term data collection, archiving, visualization, and interpretation. Using by the security operations centers and the CSIRTs for threat detection, threat hunting, incident response, and digital forensics. But the Flowmon got the advantage for network and security operations observability. So this is not only about this kind of the core security use cases, but it's also about the hybrid cloud monitoring, encrypted traffic analysis, root cause analysis, and the performance monitoring. And that's the reason that Flowmon helps to comply not only the directive articles, but we need to wait for a national legislation to map our capabilities to the direct to the paragraphs and the points and the sentences of the national laws. But from the perspective of the directive for important entities, we are able to help to be compliant with, for example, Article 20Y, like incident handling or supply chain security, because it's more about the any kind of the software implementation direct from the suppliers, or also any kind of the services provided from the third parties entities to the essential and important entities. Also the whole security network and vulnerability handling and disclosure, for example, or using the appropriate encryption, because we've got really deep visibility and capability into the encrypted traffic. And we are able to analyze if the appropriate encryption is on a place in the organizations or not. Again, the Article 23, it's so about the obligations, about the incident reporting. This is the reporting, including also the description of the type of the threat and also the root cause. And for CSIRTs, it's mainly the capability regarding the real-time or near real-time monitoring of their network and information systems. And this is all about the collecting and analyzing forensics data, providing the dynamic risk and incident analysis to support the regulated entities. But do not forget, all this kind of articles described in the directive need to be transported and adopted and published by national legislation, by every single EU member state, national legislations by October 17, 2024. So let's talk more about the handling and reporting. This is about the article. Do we have any kind of the questions?
Yes, thank you, Roman. Before we move to I believe this will be the last part. There is a question about. I'll just read it. So it's hello. I assume that the NIS2 directive is absolutely binding, or basically the question is if it's turned into the law, or it basically requires customers to fully cooperate with the directive.
No, actually, the national competent authority and the government is responsible to transpose this kind of the articles into the national legislations. And the national legislation, for example, it can be named like a cybersecurity law or act or whatever, will include this kind of the measures and obligation. But the national legislation will be definitely wider, also regarding the measures and also regarding the obligations, and also for example, directive is not describing any kind of the diagram and the scheme of the incident resolutions and so on. It all will be described in the national legislations. But this directive, yeah, for example, if the government is creating the national legislation, the better if the regulated entities and the stakeholders are, let's say, cooperating with the government during this kind of the legislation creating process.
So if I can rephrase this, it means that national governments will look at this directive when they will turn it into the law in about, let's say, those 2 years, as we established on the timeline, and it will probably have a wider scope than just these directives. So it's not binding yet, definitely. But it will be.
Yeah, but depends on the country. For example, in Slovakia, it's about the kind of the supplements of the current legislation, because the legislation is describing the most of this kind of the requirements in the directive, and the directive is just like a framework for national legislation creation or something like that.
Okay, we've got one more question. So what kind of detecting architecture should be adopted by carrier operators for hundreds of gigabytes of traffic flowing mainly from third-party ISPs to be compliant?
This is about we've got the two let's say views on that. For example, both of these kind of the entities will be the regulated entities. From the first perspective of the ISP, they need to have also this kind of the network security monitoring tool on the place, definitely, to detect any kind of the anomalies or the threats and incidents, and correlate it, aggregate it, and possibility automate any kind of the incident handling process, and they are the responsibility of the ISP infrastructure, providing any kind of the traffic, that this kind of the traffic should be without any kind of the threats. But we know that it's not about 100% security. Anyway, so the regulated entities need to have also any kind of the network security monitoring tool on the place, mainly within internal network. So that means between the edge, the perimeter, and the servers and users. So this is not the responsibility of the ISP, actually. This is the responsibility of the regulated entity.
Okay. Super. Thank you, Roman.
Okay.
That's it
No
for now.
problem. We can continue with the incident handling and reporting. Okay. This is about the Article 21 2B, like in measures, incident handling. And the best way how to do for example, we can adopt any kind of the NIST incident response cycle. This is about the preparation, that we need to be prepared for incidents. So we need to compile a list of the IT assets, such as networks, servers, endpoints, identify the importance and which ones are critical or hold sensitive data, and so on. We need to have a core capabilities for a sound incident preparation, including the centralized visibility interface, showing all endpoint configurations, process executions, network traffic, user activity, and so on. So if we use the Flowmon as a fundamental part of the network security or network monitoring itself, we can be prepared with kind of the visibility, what's the normal, what can be abnormal, and so on. Then we need to have the capability for detection and analysis. So if any kind of the incident is occurring, or any kind of the event that can mean any kind of the incident, that we are able to detect the abnormal activity in our environment from the network perspective and analyze it, which is really helpful for containment of the incident. Then after the containment, it's about the eradication and discovery. If we are not able to contain the incident in the first step, we are going back to the detection and analysis, going to deeper and deeper in the cycle for fully containment, eradication, and discovery. And then we are providing any kind of post-incident activities. That means that we need to prepare a whole report of the incident. This is about the lesson learned. We are providing the deep digital forensics, what was wrong during the preparation period, and going back to the preparation to be prepared for the better resilience, for example. So this is about the incident handling, and the incident handling is the measures in Article 21.2b in this directive. How the automated attack mitigation looks like during the detection, analysis, and containment. For example, we've got in automation way with the Flowmon any kind of the list of hosts communicated with the internal domains, external domains. We've got many information. We can go through the attack tactics and techniques, and we can, let's say, very easily to provide the automation for a response and a containment. In this term, the containment mean on a network side, the blocking any kind of the external, internal IP addresses, domains, URLs, ports, and so on. So this is the example of the automated attack mitigation procedures during the incident handling process in the detection analysis step and the containment step, using the Flowmon like network security monitoring solutions or network detection and response, for example. And the incident reporting based on the directive Article 23, describing the point 4 and 5, because 4 is for essential entities and 5 for important entities. It's all about the significant incident reporting obligations. What does it mean? That within 24 hours, the essential entity or important entity need to report incident as an early warning. So that means that they are suspected of being caused by unlawful or malicious acts or could have a cross-border impact. They can use and they will use any kind of the central cyber reporting cybersecurity information systems, which will be managed by the national competence authority, or depends on the country, or EU member states. And the incident report need to contain any kind of the detailed description of the incident, severity, impact, the type of threat of the caused by the incident, root cause that is likely to have triggered the incident. Also, description of the applied and ongoing mitigation measures. Few previous slides was describing any kind of the incident handling process, and where applicable, the cross-border impact of the incident. And let's say the incident this is all about the ongoing incidents that are spreading into the infrastructure and maybe affecting another essential entity. So within 24 hours, the early response of the CSIRT need to, or let's say, or competent authority shall provide after the receiving the early warning, the response to the notifying entity, including any kind of the initial feedback on the significant incident, or guidance or operational advice on the implementation of possible mitigation measures based on the request, if the essential or important entity is requesting any kind of the advanced support and so on. Within 72 hours, need to be updated incident reporting done, again, through the reporting cybersecurity information system. This is all about that. This is all about that this incident is still in an ongoing process. So also the national competent authority, or the CSIRTs, need to get the update and information referred to this kind of incident. So more details about the incidents, the threats, root cause, mitigation measures, and so on. And within the month, the final report need to be done of essential important entities incident handling process, because it's all about definitely if we are doing any kind of the incident response, the containment, eradication, discovery, this is not 100% possible within 72 hours. Sometimes it takes more than a month, but the legislation will require the containment, eradication, discovery within the month with the final report. Okay, any question?
We've got one question, Roman. I'm just trying to be mindful of the time. So we've got a question. What is retention policy of Flowmon? NIS describes 18 months for log management. So maybe I can answer that for you. With Flowmon, it just depends on the storage of the Flowmon collector. We have, I think the largest collector has 192 terabytes of data with the option to stack the collectors on top of each other. So basically the capacity, it only depends on the size of the collector. So we are not limited.
This is one option, that we can collect and store the data and the metadata for more than 18 months. We can store it, and many our clients are storing it for 3 years, for example, because of any kind of the operational requirements and so on. But the second option is that Flowmon is also able to do the archiving the data with a small storage of the collector health to the third-party storage, and through any kind of the option to recovery of this data for digital forensics requirements, it's able to do with this kind of the option. So first is that you've got the collector with a really big storage. The second option is archiving and recovery the data on the third-party storage. So 2 options.
Super. Thank you, Roman. We've got 4 minutes left. Do you think that you're able to go through the success stories in 4 minutes?
Really quickly. It will be within 2 minutes. Okay. So success story in Slovakia, because Slovakia created and transposed the directive framework, network and information security which was effective in 2016, and we were able to help to regulated entities to comply with national legislation. For example, this is the example. We are not talking about the articles of the directive. We are talking at the moment about how to comply the direct paragraphs and points and a sentence of the national cybersecurity law. For example, paragraph 20, it's about IT operation management. 3G, 4A, it's about the detection of cyber and security incidents. 4B, it's about evidence of cybersecurity incidents like footprints and the data collection and archiving and the packets and the flows and so on, and helps to provide the whole support for a whole obligation for operational essential operator of the essential entity entities, operator of the essential services, because NIS effective into 2016 was a little bit different than this kind of the Network Information Security Directive effective in 2022. So it was all about the capability and ability to execute not only the few paragraphs and sentences and require obligations and measures in the act, but we were able to go through the whole process of this kind of the legislation over here in Slovakia, and support the many regulated entities to implement not only this kind of the network security tool, but also the explain the necessity of the integrations and the whole architecture of the technology aspect or adaptive security architecture using this kind of the network security monitoring solution during every single step describing in this kind of the national legislation, was from registration, assets management, measures, contracts, documentations, and the audit. So, sorry that I will be so late.
Thank you, Roman, for covering it so quickly. We've got 1 minute left, so maybe at the end I would just like to share that we've kind of cut the time for the Q&A, but we've tried to answer as many questions as possible throughout the webinar. If you have any outstanding questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us on our Flowmon web through our contact form. We are very happy to help you in any way we can and provide the Flowmon solution as a way to comply with these regulations. Roman, thank you very much. This has been a really great presentation. I think our viewers were happy to know this many vital information regarding this directives. So thank you again, and I will be looking for the next webinar.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you for
attention. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.